What is going on, my fellow captains? Admiral Hattori here, and in this video I'm going to give you guys a rundown of what is a citadel. So the citadel of your ship is the magazine room and the boiler room, and they're the most important part of your ship. Now this really matters to the battleship players and the cruiser players. Destroyers do not have citadels, and carriers, they don't really care about citadels because they've rarely been seen in the battle. They only use planes. So when it comes to citadels, battleship players and cruiser players should be very concerned where your enemy's citadels is and your own citadel of your own ship. Now every ship have their own type of citadel, they have different location for citadel, but I can give you guys a rough idea where to aim and where to get those citadel shots, because the citadel shot is where you get most of your money out of the game. When you land a citadel shot, you will do the maximum amount of damage, and it depends on the rounds you use. The rounds you're supposed to use to citadel enemy is the AP round, which is the armor piercing round. Now all should have different type of calibers. For instance, my Fuso has a 14-inch gun. If you're riding a Yamato, which is an 18-inch gun, you will citadel any battleship because the 18-inch guns are guaranteed to penetrate anything. Now, there's a little variable where whether you citadel or not, which keeps the game balanced from people getting blown up in one shot or one full salvo. And this happens when you do angling or immunity zone. So the angling of your ship, armor piercing rounds, they bounce off when you angle it. Just like when you shoot a pistol and you're shooting at a steel plate and you shoot it at an angle where it's not perfectly perpendicular on the plate, like say for instance 45 degrees, the bullet will repel or bounce off. So in the battleship case, for instance this Fuso, if you were aiming at this Fuso and you have armor piercing round aimed at the Fuso, and usually battleship against battleship they will penetrate armor. Cruisers, I don't see cruisers penetrate armor on a battleship, whether they put AP or not, because AP rounds don't really even hit through the citadel, and that's why cruiser players are supposed to run HE on battleship. Now, I've never seen a cruiser actually citadeling a battleship. If it does happen, that's probably overpowered, but this is only occurring to the battleship against another battleship. If a battleship, enemy battleship, aims at the broadside of this Fuso, he will citadel, and the citadel will be located under the boiler room, which is the stock right here, the little smokestack. That's where the boiler room's at, and under the turrets, where's the magazine room. Now, if an armor piercing shot actually hits the water line, you will probably get a citadel shot. If it hits under the water line, near the water line, you will probably get a hit citadel shot. If you hit a little bit above the citadel line, you will get a citadel. So it's kind of a little bit of luck playing to it, but if you aim at the general direction of a perfectly 90-degree shot like this at a broadside and land where the water line is at, roughly where the red line for most battleships, for the Japanese battleship they always have the red line. I believe the American battleships they actually use a different paint color. Let me try to find it. Oh, this one's a little grayed out. Let me see the Wyoming. But generally, you can see the little wire line. All ships have wire line. They designed the wire line because when you put enough crew on it, the ship will go down and take displacement out of the water. So you can tell where the wire line is. So if you aim at the wire line with your reticle, and I will have footage at the end of this video where it shows me aiming with the Fuso against other ships at the wire line and adjusting my aim slightly above or below. And when it comes to citadeling, you want to time your shot. Like I said, when you see the opening where the opportunity that a battleship or a cruiser aim their broadside at you, that's when you want to fire. It's all about the quality shot over the quantity. Now if the ship is angled like this and you're trying to aim at it, there's probably a 10% or 5% chance you ever citadeling. I never citadel any ship at this angle except some cruisers. I do get cases where I shoot at the cruiser and it shoots through the hull right here and I actually get a citadel, which is probably a magazine detonation. So when the armor piercing shot pierces through your citadel, the reason why it does a lot of damage is because when it explodes inside the magazine room where you store all your shells, it will cause a chain reaction. Now to know how much damage you would do for a citadel, like I said, all ships have different type of calibers. For instance, this Fuso has a 14-inch, like I said. It will give you the information if you put your cursor above the text for your artillery shots or your salvos. It'll tell you the AP maximum amount of damage. For this case, 10,200 damage. Now HE, it is possible to citadel with HE, but it only does 5,700 damage and is very rare. And I did Citadel. I'm pretty sure I Citadel some cruisers with the Fuso, and it makes sense because cruisers' armor are much lighter than battleships, so it is possible to Citadel. But to get most of your money out of a game, you want to use AP shots. And for cruiser players, like I said, you can't Citadel battleship with a cruiser, so when you load AP, the only time you're going to use AP is against another cruiser, and you can't Citadel another cruiser depending on your caliber and the damage you do. Now, I do not play any cruiser at the moment because I'm still working on the battleship with the Yamato. I really want to unlock that Yamato, but I know for a fact that I've seen some cruiser players Citadeling other cruisers, so that's when you load AP. Now, if you're a cruiser player trying to go against a battleship player, load HE. There's no point trying to Citadeling a battleship. You actually do less damage against a battleship than loading HE. So when it comes to cruiser versus battleship, you want to load HE. Now, as much as you don't really care about battleship Citadel, you should be caring about your own Citadel, because I can't count how many times I one-shot a cruiser as a battleship player, and that's what's scary about playing a cruiser, because when you're going up close against a battleship is not really a smart idea, because you're giving them a better chance to land more shots on your Citadel. And I will have some footage at the end of the video, like I said, showing me Citadeling many cruisers. So ideally, you want to angle your armor, and that is a concept that once you reach tier 5 you should figure it out by now. And Citadels are pretty important once you hit tier 5, because everybody above tier 5 most likely will try to aim for your Citadel. Like I said, the Citadel is located under your turret, so for the Fuso, the Citadel for the magazine will probably combine these two turrets, because these two turrets are very close to each other. So if an armor piercing round in front of a battleship, say for instance in New Mexico, actually hits right on the water line, then he will Citadel me. He will Citadel me right here and right here. Now, Japanese ships have very big Citadels because, for instance, this Fuso has a lot of turrets. Now, another factor you gotta consider is the philosophy of the nation you're playing. The Japanese ship, they armor everything above the water line. So when you get Citadel, it's most likely you're gonna get Citadel right on the water line and below it. That's why Japanese battleships are easily Citadel. American battleships are a little different. They do the all or nothing armor scheme, and it's much more difficult to Citadel an American battleship. I usually Citadel more American battleship when they hit the North Carolina, because the Citadel has gotten larger. If you notice that the engine room is much bigger, the boiler room, and the magazine room is much bigger for these higher caliber weapons. So Citadeling doesn't occur as often as you expect, but when you see the opportunity to aim for the Citadel, go for it. Wait for your shots. Do not shoot right away. Just shoot it when you know your enemy is going to turn their ships. Now, another concept I want to let you guys know is the immunity zone, and a lot of players don't know what the immunity zone. This matters a lot to the higher tier ships. When you go aim your caliber, your cannon around, say for if I was playing the Fuso and I'm going against New Mexico, I'm pretty sure it's impossible to Citadel in New Mexico at a distance of 18 kilometers or 19 kilometers. You got to get really lucky to Citadel like that, because first you got to factor in the RNG, and the second thing is the immunity zone. When you fire your shells, as the shell travels a far distance, it will lose its velocity, and when it loses velocity or acceleration, it will do less damage or less penetration. So it won't penetrate as hard as being medium distance and up close. So if you're trying to Citadel someone at a far distance, it will most likely not happen unless you're really lucky and somehow land the shots. But the ideal for a battleship player to Citadel another battleship is usually 15 kilometers, 10 kilometers. Actually, 10 kilometers is probably perfect for Citadeling. And the angling of the shell coming down. When you aim at a far distance, you have a instance of plunge fire. That's the only time you can Citadel a ship, I believe. If you're angling the shot right up close, you want to aim it directly at the waterline. And it's really hard to explain all the situations you can get Citadels, because sometimes Citadels are really random. But it comes down to experience. But as long as you know where to generally aim for the ship, like for the Congo, if I go against another ship, the Congo for instance, if I'm going against it, like I said, all ships have different types of Citadel location. I will aim right here, right here, right here, and right over here. If you see my little cursor, that's where you can Citadel. And Citadel is rare, like I said, and it comes down to experience. That's all I can tell you guys. But as long as you know where the Citadel is at, around the waterline, a little bit above the waterline, and it is still possible to Citadel someone below the waterline for instance, hits the water, and you get those random citadel shot, don't be surprised. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson, and I'll give you guys some sample footage of me citadeling other ships.
We've destroyed an enemy cruiser.